Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. We are recording a podcast right now, or we will be in just a minute. Once again, I am hilariously late, I realized. But today was really nice weather, and I went for a very long run and some exercise outside, which was lovely. And so that already made me too late. And then I figured out that I hadn't done all the research I needed to do for the show. And really, there was no other time to do it. And so I had to do that. Excuses above excuses. It's basically all Jonathan's fault. My good friend Jonathan. He's on Twitch at JohnsonMH_com. He just makes me play Escape from Tarkov all day now. So I can actually manage to shoot people. So it's all his fault. Hello, Stefan. How are you? At least somebody's happy that I'm late. So it kind of works. Quick disclaimer. I won't be engaging. As soon as the podcast starts, I won't be engaging as much as usual. Don't ask. Okay, I'm not going to ask. Hello, Redeemer. How are you doing? Fadi, how are you doing? Oh, everybody. Astro C is also there. Yes, late again, as I just was saying. Anyway, usual disclaimer, I won't be engaging as much. Alerts are muted. I have alerts now, but for now they're muted. Nice to see you all. I have a red wine to get us started here. Today we're going to talk about the Exchange server hacking that's been going on, so that'll be interesting. I'm German. We don't have the time to talk about my illnesses. You have illnesses. That's not good. Well, I hope you're getting better then. Let's distract you with some cyber illnesses that Microsoft has. I hope this sound is working good, by the way. I had to top it all off. I had some sound issues just as I started. Let's just see if recording works here in Hindenburg, because that would be kind of important. That seems to work. That sounds good to me. Let's test Chopper here.
Yep, I'm a crack shot.
So how long's it taken you to be a shot like that?
Oh, almost my life.
You need cyber rubber, like a cyber condom. Is that what you're telling us here? Am I still alive? So that seems to be working. So that means can start. Is that the right date? Yeah, it's Monday today. It's Monday. That maybe I have to explain that quickly. Normally, of course, I'm recording Wednesday, and I'm aware there's still an extra episode and I have to record. I can't do that this week, I think. So on Wednesday, I will be streaming Disco Elysium, the final cut, all day. So I can't hardly be recording a podcast. So that's why we're doing it today. The sound is fine. That's good. That's good to hear. That's always it's always a bonus when you're trying to record a podcast. Okay. Yes. You want donations. I get it. Okay. Why is this like on that? I think it's better this way. I got too many windows. Okay, I'm just gonna launch into the show. I think that's what we're all here for. It's already late, so let's get it over with. No, it's gonna be fun. If you like rants, there are probably gonna be some rants in the show. So let's do this. What the fuck is that popping sound? I don't like that. Let's do that again. Maybe if it doesn't work, maybe I'll have to fix it in post. We can always do that. Shit. Okay, I have to stop this again. There's always something. Where do I stop? Is it? Oh, it's here. Okay, right. Okay. It's all good. It's all good. I got this. You're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 62 for Monday, the 29th of March, 2021. Exchange Hell. Hello everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Fab, I'm your host. I'm coming to you live from the city of Düsseldorf in Germany on Central European summertime now. We're now in summertime, which doesn't really concern you if you're listening to this on a podcast, really, which I think you probably are. I'm just saying this because I'm, of course, as every week now, I'm recording this live on Twitch in front of an audience, which is always fun. And yeah, we're going to talk about some more cyber today. After that, after a recent episode where I kind of laid the groundwork for like 2 episodes, talking about cyber war. And on the previous episode, I talked about the Solarwinds hack. And today we're going to have to talk about that exchange hack that was big news at the beginning of the month. And maybe at some point we can actually, in a later episode, then transition to email, maybe security and privacy in general, because I think people are very interested in this, at least so I've been told. So maybe we can segue that at some point. And, you know, there's an extra episode I still need to record. So it's going to happen this week. You're getting an early episode here on Monday because usually these come out on Wednesday. But I'll be streaming all day Wednesday. I will be streaming Disco Elysium Final Cut video game, which I like very much. There's a new version coming out. Anyway, that's why we're doing this now. So we're going to talk about the exchange hack and why exchange in 2021 is still shit. Of course, we have some feedback later on in the show, as usual. I always say this. I appreciate feedback. I appreciate everybody giving me their view on what I talk about in the show. That's an integral part of the show. So please go to privatecitizen.press, have a look at the show notes, and have a look at the contact link and the various ways to contact me. And but before we get into the main topic, there's some errata I have to do. I made a mistake. I talked about the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in the previous show, and or in several previous shows, I think. And I was completely wrong because I made a mistake. I didn't know better. So I think without further ado, I should launch into that, and we should be fixing that mistake immediately. It's not really breaking news, but I like the news bumper, and I'm not using it often, and I want to kind of differentiate this from the other topics. So what happened? I talked a lot about SARS-CoV-2, obviously COVID-19 on this show because of the privacy implications, and also in some cases the IT security implications, the politics implications, all the things we talk about on the show, and also, some listeners asked me what I think about the vaccine, so I gave kind of my view on that. And I had been under the impression that the vaccine they developed at Oxford University, which then is now being marketed and sold by AstraZeneca, which is a big, I think, Swedish-British conglomerate. They're a big biotech company, a farmer, big farmer. And I was under the impression that worked pretty much like the flu vaccine. And I kind of like that idea because, mRNA being a new system, a very cool system. I talked about this on the show as well. Once I looked into it, very cool system, but it's very new. And I thought this was more of the old school stuff, which it isn't at all, because the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, or as it's called, AZD1222, is also a very new vaccine, and in a bit of a way that worries me maybe a little bit more than the mRNA one. I still think I would take it. I said, that I'm not really, it's not a priority for me because I don't think, even if I get, an SARS-CoV-2 infection, I don't think I'm going to get really sick or like really die. But, I talked about that before. But there's some new stuff that's come up. Before we start, I have to point out a little pet peeve of mine and maybe rant. Even if you click on the, I'll put a link to Wikipedia where they describe this vaccine. So the official Wikipedia article of this vaccine is actually wrong, as are most news stories. And actually the packaging design from AstraZeneca is also wrong, because this is called a COVID-19 vaccine, which technically is not correct. COVID-19 is the disease. SARS-CoV-2 is the virus. Now, you can't vaccinate against a disease, right? COVID-19 is symptoms, is a collection of symptoms. You can't vaccinate against that. What you're vaccinating against is the virus. That's usually not a problem when you're talking stuff like influenza, because, influenza A, B, whatever gets shortened to influenza, and then it's the disease and the virus. Often also called just abbreviated the flu. But in this case, it's completely wrong. And it's wrong on the packaging, and it's wrong everywhere. My wife bought some antigen tests for SARS-CoV-2 the other day, and they say COVID-19 antigen test. No, COVID-19 doesn't have antigens. It's a disease. The virus, your body creates antigens to the virus. I'm just thinking, am I confusing antigens and what's the other anti? I tend to confuse them, so that might be wrong, but that's just my brain. But like, it's completely wrong to call it, like, this is just a pet peeve of mine. It completely, like, even in Wikipedia it says target, like they have this box, right, that Wikipedia always has, and it says target SARS-CoV-2. So they get it right there. Anyway, let's talk about this vaccine and what I was getting wrong. So basically, when you the traditional vaccines you have against like virus diseases don't use what's called a virus vector, which is actually putting a virus into your, or parts of a virus into your system. Well, technically there are parts of virus, but not like, anyway, not like DNA or RNA. So the flu vaccine, I think the way it works, it's just basically antibodies, right? They create, antibodies. I was mistaking it. I was talking antibodies, right? That's the antigenes are the things that are on the virus, and the antibodies are the ones that lock with the antigenes, and the antibodies are produced by your immune system. Anyway, so with a traditional vaccine like the flu vaccine, I think they just breed basically these antibodies in, I think, eggs, like chicken eggs or something, and then I think they just make a shit ton of those, and they inject them into your bloodstream, and then your immune system goes like, oh look, apparently we produce some antibodies that we don't know about, but hey, let's make more of those, and then you're immune. Now, in Twitch chat, Terrestrius Jim is asking, no, this has nothing to do with Antifa. That is something completely different. Let's not get into that. Let's not open that can of worms. Yeah, and Stefan says you should leave the COVID shit to Professor Drosten's podcast. No, I won't, because he was hilariously wrong on it. Like, in the beginning, he wasn't much better than me on his podcast. So, and I'm not even a virologist. And no, his podcast has created a whole lot of political problems that we have often talked about. And listeners to this podcast understand why I talk about these things. I mean, not usually I don't talk about like vaccinations and stuff, but it has this whole situation has created a big political problem. I think has created privacy problems, problems with civil liberties that I'm very interested in. Anyway, so the other vaccine, the first vaccine that actually got released was the mRNA vaccine. We talked about that. So basically, the cool thing about that is what they are doing with that vaccine. Whereas, for the flu vaccine, they give you the antibodies directly. The mRNA vaccine takes mRNA, like a piece of mRNA. So, SARS-CoV-2 being an mRNA virus, not the complete virus, just the bit that makes the spike proteins. So the things that are outside of the virus, right? The things that your immune system recognizes. And it brings that into your cell. Your cell then goes and reads that mRNA, like the parts in your cell that are supposed to read mRNA and make proteins, read that in, make the spike proteins. They get expressed, I think, on the cell, or they enter your bloodstream, and then your immune system goes and sees, oh my God, there's a virus. There isn't a virus, it's just that one bit, but that's enough to kick off your immune response. Now, the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Oxford vaccine, and I think the Sputnik one, the Russian one as well, basically that's the same thing, except they have an intermediary step. So they actually took a chimpanzee flu virus. The reason they took a chimpanzee virus is so it can't replicate in humans, for some reasons that I don't completely understand, but then I'm not a cell biologist or a virologist. But, the idea is, they can't replicate. So they take that virus, they take stuff out there so it won't replicate itself in your body. But the stuff in there is actually DNA. So it's a viral vector, kind of like the mRNA one, but it's DNA. And that goes into your cell. And it's not supposed to, and I don't think it does. It cannot integrate itself into your DNA, because the parts that are responsible for that are just not there. That would be like virus parts that they've taken out. And then that DNA gets transposed to mRNA, and that does the same thing as the mRNA vaccine, creates a spike protein. Now this approach has some problems that the mRNA thing has not. So the process of, like, when your cell reads, so you have genes in your DNA, right? And those get read out, basically. They get transcribed to mRNA, and then the mRNA gets read in, and then proteins are made. And that's a one-way process. You can go from DNA to mRNA to proteins, but you can't go from mRNA to DNA. So the beauty about the mRNA approach is that it cannot alter your DNA at all. That's not possible. Like, from what we know how the cell works, that just doesn't happen. Now, the problem with this, well, I'm not saying the problem, but a theoretical problem with this, which these vaccine companies actually can't, they can't say this is not happening. They can't, just categorically deny that this is happening. This DNA could actually end up incorporating itself into your DNA by accident, basically. It's not supposed to do that, but then there's processes in your body that theoretically that could happen. It can't create a virus. I'd probably create spike. It probably wouldn't do anything. The major downside with that is usually the biggest downside you have from something like this is you could develop cancer in that cell. Because when weird, gene sequences end up in your DNA that are not supposed to be there, that can cause cancer, because that often or sometimes disrupts mechanisms of the cell, or basically cuts loose these mechanisms that make the cell just replicate wildly, and that's basically cancer. Now, that's probably even not going to be a problem, even if that happens, because we're just talking a few cells here, right? Probably 100 cells or something, and you have that happen all the time. Like, something that happens in your body all the time, that a cell there's a mutation, sunlight, radiation, something hits your body, a spin in a boson or whatever, cosmic whatever, and then your cell just cuts loose and becomes a cancer cell. Now, that happens all the time, and our immune system has ways to killing those, right? We have special cells in the immune system that go around looking for cancer cells, killing them. The problem is when you actually develop cancer is when that just doesn't work because there are too many, or there are special kinds of cells and hard to kill or hard to find. But that's probably all not going to happen, but it could theoretically happen, which it can't with the mRNA. One question that I have that nobody has been able to answer for me in researching all this is, why does somebody who gets this vaccine, why are they not classed as a GMO, a genetically modified organism? Because what you're doing there is, I know, if the vaccine works as it's supposed to be, that DNA that ends up in your cell from the vaccine is transcribed into mRNA and not included in your DNA. But it could theoretically happen. And if that happened, that's gene editing. You just edited somebody's DNA. So they're now classed as a GMO, right? Which means, if you have animals, lab animals, there's so strict rules that you can't get them out of. There's special labs for this. They're not allowed to go out. They're not allowed to wildly replicate. So we don't really. I don't really understand. I don't know why that is. I think it's because every scientist who's asked this question has just been told, shh, don't. We already have enough anti-vaxxers as it is. So, shut up. But I would like to have that question answered. And I would probably ask somebody just to scramble their brain. I object because, I'm married to a biologist. I know a lot of biologists. I know people who have done gene editing to get their PhDs. So I'm not afraid of gene editing. But there's lots of these people and oh my God, the genetically modified corn is going to kill us all, right? It's just gonna if you're worried about that, why are you not worried about this vaccine? If you're worried about eating genetically modified corn or that corn being out in the wild, why are you not? What's your problem why don't you have a problem with this vaccine? That would be my question. But just to scramble their brains because it just doesn't make any sense. Stefan says scientists that specialize in viruses should do podcasts like that. I object to that. I don't think so. No, I think this is exactly my job. I'm a journalist. I read stuff. I research stuff, and I don't have to be a virologist to talk about these topics. And I actually I think this is cool that we're having this. That's why I like this Twitch, live feedback, because I object to that very attitude, right? This podcast is built on people and me. I read about things and I think about them and then I talk to you, right? I'll try to give you some information and I give you everything I have. Everything I use for the show to make it is in the show notes. And I object to people just saying you shouldn't talk about this. Either you have a factual problem with what I just said, then please contact me, write to me and tell me why, and I'm going to talk about this on the show. I mean, I'm open to just also getting people on the show. I've done this before to discuss this with them, but just objecting to somebody, saying, you shouldn't be talking about this. Why? If that's the case, you shouldn't consume any journalism. Because newsflash here, all the people you see on TV news, all the newspapers you read, these people know even less about this stuff than me. And then, yes, you're saying, okay, yeah, but they're asking experts. Yes, yeah, but how do they know the experts are right? Newsflash, they don't. I've been an expert for other journalists on IT security where I knew exactly what I was talking about and they didn't. I could have told them anything. They would have never noticed. They would have gotten me on for years after that because they would never have noticed. So, that's just don't do that. I'm open to criticism, factual criticism. For example, here, I did a clear mistake talking about this vaccine. So sadly, nobody picked that up. and nobody wrote in. It would have been amazing if somebody had written in like the very next episode saying, you got this wrong. Here's the link. So, I'm just saying that's what we're trying to cultivate here, right? I'm trying to make everybody think for themselves. I think it's a big problem in our society. It's actually probably the biggest problem in our society right now. That people go like, oh, this guy's a virologist, he's an expert, I'm just going to listen to him, he's going to be right. No, newsflash, they're wrong too, and they disagree, which you can see in the media. You can see different virologists vehemently disagreeing on things. And then everybody's like, oh yeah, but Drosten is the cool guy. How do you know? Like, do you have a PhD in biology or in medical sciences? No, you don't. Newsflash, it's not black and white. It's not right or wrong. People are there's levels of gray, and that's what I'm trying to make better with journalism. Like that's why I'm doing this podcast, and I think it's worked really well. After the Linux podcast for years, we were far from experts in Linux, but we like to work into stuff. Sometimes we got something wrong, and then somebody wrote in, and we're like, okay. Fix it on the next episode. We'll fix it in post. Anyway, no, I don't. Also, don't take this the wrong way. This is not like, I don't mean this in a mean way. I just want to explain for everybody how this works. And if you're listening to this on the podcast and you're like, he got that down completely wrong, please, privatecitizen.press. You can contact me anonymously. I don't have to read out your name on the show. But my goal here is to get accurate information to other people. I think that's what a journalist should do. And if you go like, hey, I can't do that because I'm not an expert in that topic, then basically you've given up. The very idea of a journalist is somebody who's not an expert in the topic, who tries their best. And, maybe if they talk a lot about a certain subject and they do a lot of research, they become an expert in the topic. Right. So anyway, I think that's it on that note. Let's get to the actual topic we wanted to talk about here. Let's talk about exchange and hacking, and something I am allegedly an expert on. So, let's talk about exchange hacking. I'm going to actually have a break here because we just had this discussion, and I do want to read. I usually don't do this, but I do want to read chat quickly here. Yes, antibodies. Yeah, I know I was wrong on that. But I always confuse those two. This is too much anti going on. And yes, mRNA. So DNA is double strand, right? It's taken apart, and then one strand is mirrored, and you got your mRNA, and that goes to another part of the cell. Is it the? Oh, I forgot which. I forgot which part it is. Anyway, that gets read in, and then proteins are generated from that information. And you can't take mRNA. There's no mechanism in the cell to like open the DNA and then take a strand of mRNA and make a DNA strand out of that. It's like the internet. It's like, you know how they originally had the idea that the internet was going to be read-write, and it's like, it's not. And that's the same way. It's so that nothing, like, otherwise anything could, like, stuff could shoot mRNA into your cell, and then you could just rewrite people's DNA. Of course, we're talking like, Ebola, I think influenza, SARS. These are all mRNA or RNA viruses, and they're all built not to alter your DNA. There are, of course, viruses that do that. There are RNA viruses that actually go into your cell, and I think the adenoviruses actually do that, like the one they adapted for this vaccine. There are viruses who do that, but that's a very completely different class of viruses. Is it the ribosome? Could be. I learned all this in high school, but it's been a very long time ago. And I tend to I know it's not the Golgi apparatus. Anyway, let's continue with this podcast. I just want to read chat here because I thought this is actually an interesting discussion. And just, good point to point out again how this podcast works and what we're trying to cultivate here. Anyway, let's put a marker here so I can fix this back together. So yeah, last episode, we talked about the Solarwinds hacker attack, which obviously was huge news last year or the beginning of the year. And I kind of explained how it was kind of also an email hack because it all started, the catalyst, so to speak, was Microsoft having vulnerabilities in Office 365. So their web email suite, which is, supposed to be so secure, and that just led attackers to get credentials for things and get to, among other things, Solarwinds, the company, and get into their systems, and then start this whole supply chain attack that was in the news so much. Now, we've learned there, and if you haven't listened to episode 61 and maybe episode 60, I talked in episode 60, I talked a little bit about cyber war and, what cyber war and whatnot in preparation for talking about these two attacks, which have both been branded as cyber war, state-sponsored attackers and all that. And I talked about different attack vectors and why email is so important, right? Why I'm not going to go into this in detail now. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, probably worth going back and listen to those first. Just email being basically the nervous system of every modern organization, every company. And we just had a hack that basically started out with Microsoft's cloud email service being compromised. And we're now getting a hack that is compromising the others, the more old school email system that is Microsoft Exchange. And in this case, of course, not the cloud version, but the so-called on-premises version, which is newspeak for, back in the day, we just called it software, right? You wanted an email server, you set it up yourself. On-premises, what's the thing to do? That was just normal. And of course, that is also vulnerable. And, obviously gets hacked for the same reasons that Office 365 gets hacked. So at the beginning of this year, hundreds of thousands of Exchange email servers were hacked. So this was first discovered and privately reported to Microsoft on the 5th of January. And then the first breach was observed by in the separate cybersecurity. So this was like security researchers. And there was another security company. I'm also saying cybersecurity company. I got the cyber virus in my brain. It's not good. They observed the first attacks a day later. And then it just escalated. All hell broke loose. Now, amazingly, one would think, I don't think it's amazing because I've had a career now. I spent almost a decade now writing about Microsoft and how they patch things or how they not patch things for a while. Amazingly, it took them until the 2nd of March, so the beginning of this month, to actually acknowledge that there's a problem, i.e. put out a patch. And Wikipedia has a nice overview, so I've looked at, obviously, I read a lot of primary sources on this for weeks. Also looked at some for today, but Wikipedia has just a nice overview. I'm generally going to quote from that for this episode again, because, it's just the news writing tends to be, I need, when I prepare an episode like this and try to give you information, I need a good overview. And the news writing, of course, always, news journalists, I've been one myself for quite a while now. We just do new the breaking news and what's new. And then you have like 15 articles that rehash everything, and there's like always the new thing in there. And that's just not good if you need to link something. So while Wikipedia sometimes has issues, especially also in the language department and the way it's written, because they're obviously not professional writers most of the time, it's often a good overview. And of course, pro tip, there are primary sources linked everywhere. So those little numbers on Wikipedia, click on them, click through on the primary source, and read, check up on that. Check up on Wikipedia. Like you should be checking up on me and anybody else out there. Dr. Drosten, you should be checking up on everybody. Don't believe any experts, says the guy who was certified expert on TV quite a lot. So Wikipedia talks about this and says, a global wave of cyber attacks and data breaches began in January 2021. So it's 2021 and Exchange is still shit. After 4 zero-day exploits were discovered in on-premises Microsoft Exchange servers, giving attackers full access to user emails and passwords on affected servers, administrator privileges on the server, and access to connected devices on the same network. Attackers typically install a backdoor that allows the attacker full access to impacted servers, even if the server is later updated to no longer be vulnerable to the original exploits. As of the 9th of March 2021, it was estimated that 250,000 servers fell victim to the attacks, including servers belonging to around 30,000 organizations in the United States, 7,000 servers in the United Kingdom, as well as the European Banking Authority, the Norwegian Parliament, and Chile's Commission for the Financial Market. So obviously, there are not that many, like 250,000 servers is a lot if you're talking email servers, because there are not that many email servers, right? You will have, a company will have a handful. A medium-sized company will have like 1 or 2 email servers. And so this is actually very significant. On the 2nd of March 2021, Microsoft released updates for Microsoft Exchange Server 2010, 2013, 2016, and 2019 to patch the exploit. This does not retroactively undo damage or remove backdoors installed by the attackers. So this is patching so basically what happens is you have the number of vulnerabilities that these attackers use to get into your system, and then they install like typically a web shell, basically a way to like control your server from the outside with admin privileges. And then even if you patch these vulnerabilities in Exchange, your server is still owned, right? So they have control of your server. And the problem here is that whenever something like this happens, any IT security professional worth their salt, if you ask them what shall we do, will tell you if you have significant reason to believe that your server has been compromised, you have to reinstall from scratch, like completely. That's the only way to be sure. Nuke it from orbit, as Sigourney Weaver says in Alien. It's the only way to be sure, because once somebody has admin privileges on your server, I mean they can hide, they can delete logs. It's very, very hard to find out what's going on. And even if you in most cases you can, but you just do that for forensic reasons. If you want to find out who was it and what they actually did, like if you just want to move on, right? If you're like, yes, espionage, they stole some secrets, we don't really need to know whatever. We're a small company. Then just wipe the thing and reinstall it. It's much, much quicker than trying to figure out what actually happened and be reasonable sure that you got all the infection out. So that's also, of course, where a lot of the damage here comes in, because all these people, if they are reasonable, they will have to install all of these servers. On the 12th of March 2021, Microsoft announced the discovery of a, quote, new family of ransomware, end quote, being deployed to servers initially infected, encrypting all files, making the server inoperable, and demanding payment to reverse the damage. So obviously, clusterfuck. And yeah, email servers being compromised is a bad thing. I mean, first of all, because as I said, email is kind of the nervous system of the company. They can get all this information. They can impersonate your employees, right? They can do fraud. They can get access to systems in the network by getting users to install software, which they can do because they know everything about you because they read your emails, right? And then if the user, like if you send a user whose computer you want to own, like this, you impersonate the IT person, right? And you go like, please install this file, it's very important. And then if they actually go and write back or ask anybody, should I really do this? And if they do that over email, which used to happen a lot, now it's even worse because everybody's working from home, right? Usually you would say if something like this happens and you shouldn't trust your email system anyway, you should walk over to the IT guys and go like, did you send me this email? This is like really weird. This is not something an IT person would do. Anyway, nobody does this. They'll just send an email. As the attacker, you can actually intercept that email so it can never get to IT people. You can answer it yourself. Like, all bets are off at this point. And then, of course, the problem here was also that they not only owned the Exchange server. I mean, that's like a Windows server in the network, right? And they got admin on that, and then from there on, they can get to other machines. They can probably, I don't know, maybe even own the Active Directory, and then they own the whole network. So it's like it's definitely not good. So how was this discovered? On the 5th of January 2021, security testing company DevCore sounds like a band, made the earliest known report of the vulnerability to Microsoft, which Microsoft verified on the 8th of January. It took them 2 fucking months to fix this, to put the patch out. The first breach of a Microsoft Exchange server instance was observed by cybersecurity company Volexity. I think these were also involved in the, we talked about them last episode about SolarWinds, on the 6th of January, so 1 day later. By the end of January, cybersecurity company Volexity had observed a breach allowing attackers to spy on 2 of their customers and alerted Microsoft to the vulnerability. After Microsoft was alerted of the breach, Volexity noted the hackers became less stealthy in anticipation of a patch. So somehow they figured out that they had actually contacted Microsoft, which is interesting. Or somehow they figured out that Microsoft was working on a patch. And how did this hacking work? Hackers took advantage of 4 separate zero-day vulnerabilities. This is significant. I talked in previous episodes about why 0 days are a special kind of vulnerability, and they're worth a lot, right? There are instances of people having sold 0 days, especially in integral Microsoft products, for like $1 million, basically. So 4 0-day vulnerabilities are worth a lot. You have to take note of this. And this is special because, 0 days, you burn them, right? So 0 days are a vulnerability that exists and nobody else knows it exists. So even the company whose product you're attacking doesn't know. So a 0 day in Exchange means I hacker, Fab hacker, knows there's a vulnerability and I can take over Exchange servers, and Microsoft doesn't know. Nobody knows. That is worth a lot because I can go attack these servers and nobody can stop me. Like antivirus can't stop me because if I write like custom malware and I'm good at my job, then they won't detect that. They don't have any signatures for this. Microsoft, they don't know patches. But you burn that because sooner or later somebody finds out because, as in this case, Fab le hacker goes hacks a company. Now they're a customer of Volexity or some other FireEye, whatever, and they will notice at some point, right? They will probably not notice the actual attack at first or the vulnerability. What they will notice is just some things like weird network traffic, maybe the data getting exfilled, something. They'll notice something, and then they'll start digging, and then they'll find what happened, and then I find my exploit, and then I've burned my 0 day. So if you have a 0 day, it's worth a lot, and you are choosing very specifically what to use it for, That's why, intelligence services like the NSA, like, the Russian, I already forgotten what they're called, like, not the NKVD, like the new, whatever the KGB has split up into now. The Chinese, nobody knows, but their intelligence service is so good, nobody even knows what it's called. It's probably unpronounceable. The Danish intelligence service, the they have a name nobody can pronounce, which is also good. The BND probably does this kind of shit. They collect these things because they're worth a lot. So burning 4 is that's an escalate. That happens very rarely. And like 4 0 days in exchange are that's like a fucking gold mine you just blew up with TNT just to show how rich you are. And there's no gold flying from the sky, because as you can see here, it's like state-sponsored hackers. We have Jonathan in the chat, who is in Copenhagen. The Politiets Efterretningstjeneste. Forstvarest Efterlings. So Forstvarest the military. I give up. I can't do Danish. I'm gonna get. Maybe we need like a Danish listener to record these. Like send me sound bites, like an actual Danish person, and I just can push a button, and then I could push this button.
Savvy.
They'll just say
Savvy.
Forstvarest Efterlings. Whatever. No, say it less Russian. We're going to talk about Russian. We're also going to talk about vaccines again, because a Russian listener had some input on that in a Russian perspective, and he also criticized my Russian, but we're going to get to that later. Anyway, so these guys collect these, and so burning 4 in one attack is significant. I don't know what that means, but it means something. An ex-colleague of mine, an expert in this area, Jürgen Schmidt, used to be my boss at Heise, wrote a column on this where he basically said this thing is a Schwanzvergleich. So that's a German, what's that in English? Dick measuring contest of some military dudes. Where the Russians went, let's do our Solarwinds, and then the Chinese were, you think that's a hack? We're gonna burn 4 0 days in one go just to show you we got them. We got 0 days coming out of every hole. It's like they're coming out of the walls. We've got so many 0 days, we can just burn them and shit like this. Anyway, so what actually happened? Hackers took advantage of 4 separate 0-day vulnerabilities to compromise Microsoft Exchange Server's Outlook web access. So that's the web interface. If you have an Exchange server and you don't use like Outlook or Thunderbird, or if you mean Claws Mail, no, I wouldn't use Exchange. I hate that shit. But like if you're not using a standalone client, you use a web client. That's what everybody uses these days. So that's OWA. Giving them access to victims' entire service and networks, as well as to emails and calendar invitations, only at first requiring the address of the server, which can be directly targeted or obtained by mass scanning for vulnerable servers. The attacker then used 2 exploits, the first allowing an attacker to connect the server and falsely authenticate as a standard user. With that, a second vulnerability can then be exploited, escalating that user access to administrator privileges. And by the way, this is how hacks often work. This is why like the falsehood that, it's just the local privilege execution, like that, that's always used by companies. It's not that important. You can never, if you look at the security vulnerability, you can never assume it's going to be used on its own, right? It might be a local privilege escalation, so that means you have to have a user, and then you can make that user admin. But what you do is, if you find something like this and you're a hacker, you don't even have to be an intelligence service, like professional hack, even like script kiddies. If you have something like this, you just file it away, and then if you find another exploit that lets you just log in as a normal user on a server, you chain those together, and boom, you're admin, right? So that's why you can never look at a vulnerability like on its own. You always have to assume that there's more you can combine it with. That's usually how these hacks work. They're usually not one like silver bullet. Usually there are all these chained together exploits, and then it kind of works. That's kind of how they do that. So they first got a normal user. They logged in with that. Then they had another exploit. Then they had admin privileges, and then from there, Bob's your uncle. The final two exploits allow attackers to upload code to the server in any location they wish. So that's like the nuclear bomb, right? You can just go somewhere and where executable code lives, put that there, make it accessible from the web, and now you own the server. That automatically runs with the administrator privileges. There you go. Attackers then typically use this to install a web shell, providing a backdoor to the compromised server, which gives hackers continued access to the server as long as both the web shell remains active and the Exchange server remains on. So web shell is a thing that is like a command line interface that you can use from the web, right? There are different ways. Basically, it's a way to you connect to a website, but instead of actually using the website, you can actually send it commands, and you can go like, oh, please go there, download this code, run it. There you have it. So that's how they owned the servers. Through the web shell installed by attackers, commands can be run remotely. Among the actions observed are the downloading of all emails from servers, downloading the passwords and email addresses of users as Microsoft Exchange Microsoft Exchange stores these unencrypted in memory. Woohoo! Adding users, adding further backdoors to affected system, accessing other systems in the network that are unsusceptible to the original exploit, because you have root basically, or in Windows terminology, system privileges on a server in the network, so the other servers trust it. And installing ransomware. Patching the Exchange server against the exploit does not retroactively remove installed backdoors. Attackers continue to have access to the server until the web shell, other backdoors, and user accounts added by the attackers are removed. Right? And they could have put a rootkit on it, which is really hard to detect. After the patch was announced, the tactics changed when using the same chain of vulnerabilities. So these guys saw, there's a patch. Actually, what was basically happening was, as soon as a patch was on the horizon, they used to be a little bit more stealthy, with hacking. Although they weren't as stealthy as the Solarwinds guys, who that really looked like, if it was the Russians, as I said, I have no idea of knowing, no way of knowing. It could have been anybody, but that was like state-sponsored espionage, right? They were like they could have theoretically owned much more servers than these guys, but they didn't. They just looked at the stuff they actually wanted to own, and then went in very quietly and just got like information out in a very, very stealthy way. And these guys were, I don't know, we don't know how long it's been going on, but they were detected at some point, and then they were like, oh, there's a patch coming, let's just like hack everything, which is like why Jürgen in the Heise column said, it's kind of like a dick measuring contest, because basically it looked like the impact they wanted is like to scare everybody off and show everybody what they could do. Not like, the SolarWinds stuff, that sounds like, espionage. We're quiet, nobody knows we're there, we're just reading everything. This is more like, hey, it's more like the military. Let's they have a ship there. We could get a missile there. Let's blow up their ship. Let's show them who's boss here. Right. So this continues after the patch was announced. Okay, after the patch was announced, the tactic changed. And then interestingly, so we know that Exchange Server 2010, 2013, 2016, 2019 are vulnerable. We don't know if that's all. And Microsoft apparently still looking at that. They still haven't figured that out. It seems like they kind of rushed out the patch a little bit. It was also not working on some installs. There was like weird shit that didn't work, which is not typical for Microsoft. I have to give them that. Like usually when they push out patches, it's something really has to go wrong for it to even be even worse or not work. But like it's amazing that they apparently rushed it and it took them 2 months. That just shows you how arcane and horrible Exchange is. And I know this. I'm a self-confessed geek, and by that I mean I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. What I do is like I like technological stuff, especially like software. And I like, going in there and doing it myself. And I don't have, ever since I'm working as a journalist, I don't have as much time anymore. So I try not to run servers and run everything on my own, which is fun, but a lot of work. You learn a lot with it, but there's a time, money trade-off there. So I try not to, I can't really do that so much anymore. But, I try to figure out technologies. I've never run an email server because long before I had anything to do with security and writing about it professionally, I understood that an email server is just it's less the juiciest target you can have. It's generally, everybody wants to hack these. They're really, really high value targets. They're basically, if you play World of Warships or you're into naval warfare, they're the aircraft carrier. Everybody read up World War II. How the Germans were happy when they sank that one aircraft. That's the high profile. You want to sink that thing. And it's relatively badly protected by itself, right? There's all this perimeter defense. But if you could get a sub through and you can sink that thing, you don't want to be on that aircraft carrier. Anyway, so I never wanted to run my own email server. And understanding that, I understood that there's one thing, running your own email server. And then there's running your own Exchange server. An Exchange server is to stay with the metaphor, it's like an aircraft carrier where you paint a big target on the runway for the bombers, and then you send your task force away. You guys, you destroyers, you cruisers, you go do your shit. I'm safe here. I know what I'm doing. I'm safe here in the shallow waters. They're not going to attack me. So no, I did it's just, again, we're going to get a little bit into that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why this whole thing was as bad as it is just the state of Exchange. And I think that's also why it took Microsoft so long to patch it. I think it's just it's a clusterfuck. It's a patch together thing that's, generally email systems are not very modern, There's no startups in Silicon Valley going, hey, let's write an email server, because there's no money in it, because it's an open, it's not they all write social networks. So it's relatively arcane and hard to secure and hard to run reliably. So actually, I had a point in my life where I thought running your own email server would be good, and I stepped back from that brink. Very, 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 very carefully. Right, and so the patch was released on the 2nd of March 2021. Oh god, I forgot. Sorry, I'm not prepared again. I don't have the official Microsoft bullhorn. On the 2nd of March 2021, the
Microsoft Security Response Center, MSRC,
publicly posted an out-of-band common vulnerability and exposures release, urging its clients to patch the Exchange servers to address a number of critical vulnerabilities. On the 15th of March, Microsoft released a one-click PowerShell tool, the so-called Exchange on-premises Mitigation Tool, which installs, I like how they always have to say on-premises. It's like, oh, you're like the leper of the family, right? You're not in the cloud. Which installs the specific updates protecting against the threat, runs a malware scan, which also detects installed web shells and removes threats that were detected. This is recommended as a temporary mitigation measure, as it does not install other available updates. Yeah, and you should, if that thing finds anything, you should probably reinstall your Exchange server anyway. Yeah, so I love that. It's how it is I had these issues when I was working at previous companies with these colleagues that are just, you just noticed how journalists get too close to a topic, and if journalists write too much about Microsoft, right? I had the same issue with Thurrott on Twit, or Mary Jo Foley or whatever. These guys who just write about Microsoft all day, they just assimilate they're like Microsoft, like any big company, has this newspeak, right? So they have this out of band, which is very special, which means we have a patch cycle. We patch our systems once a month on a certain day, Patch Tuesday. And then if something really bad happens, we have an out-of-band patch. And it's like, oh, out-of-band. As if it's like black magic or voodoo or anything. Like, you just had hundreds of thousands of servers owned. Like, it's the world is burning. Why are you making, like, a special thing that the patch is, like, out of the thing that the patch is out-of-band? Of course it's out-of-band. Right? Your fucking product just got nuked. There's just burning debris raining down on your office. Of course you're patching it out of band. What do you mean you're not waiting for the next first Tuesday of the month? Of course you're not. Like, how is that even, like, why is that, it's like, out of band. Why is that even mentioned? Right? I mean, I know that, there's certain ways of mentioning. I mean, I've written articles but I like, when I do that, I point out why I'm mentioning that, right? You can write into an article that it's like it's special. It's a special thing, and Microsoft doesn't do that often. And mostly, I would just then combine that with criticism of Microsoft because they don't do this shit often enough. Like it's changing now, which is why out of band is probably becoming the new norm. But generally, we do not live in a time where if you know about a vulnerability and you have a patch, you can afford to wait. Like, I don't know, half a month or whatever, till a certain day rolls around, just so you're not surprising your administrators, right? You gotta ask yourself, hey, what's more inconvenient? Them getting a patch on the day where they don't know about it and they'll have to stay in the office late, or their fucking system getting owned, everything getting spied on, all the data getting exfiltrated, and then all the servers have to be reinstalled, or like fucking ransomware in the whole company and no computer works anymore, right? What's more of an inconvenience, Microsoft? Maybe it Astral says, as Astral C says in chat, maybe it means it doesn't come in the normal update channel. Well, it just comes, there's just one update channel. It means out of band means it's not. It doesn't happen on Patch Tuesday, and that's I think Microsoft holding on to Patch Tuesday is a thing they need to, like. It's just a sign of the times that's just not. It's just not timely anymore. I don't think that's anything they can afford anymore. But let's criticize Microsoft more a bit later. Let's first look at who was the attacker here. And surprisingly, this time, it's not the Russian hackers, TM. Microsoft said that the attack was initially perpetrated by Hafnium, which, by the way, I don't know what that is either. Like, I've heard the name before, but, like, you don't know there's very little known about these guys. Was perpetrated by Hafnium, a Chinese state-sponsored hacking group. So it's the Chinese all of a sudden. All of a sudden, it's the Chinese. A Chinese state-sponsored hacking group that operates out of China. See, this is why reading Wikipedia sometimes is dumb. A Chinese state-sponsored hacking group that operates out of China. Guys, you need an editor. Hafnium is known to install the web shell China Chopper, which I'd never heard of. That's not this chopper here.
Yep, I'm a crack shot.
So how long's it taken you to be a shot like that?
Oh, for most of my life.
For reference, that was Chopper Reed, the infamous Australian criminal who killed several people and once conducted an interview with a journalist where he shot a bottle out of a guy's hand who he'd paid, he said himself, by the hour, and then proceeds to do Russian roulette with the journalist, with his, that was the journalist you just heard in the clip, with his Magnum revolver. It's fun looking that up. It's a television show called Hard Copy. Interview happened in 1995. It's a very fun interview, just as a side. And whenever I hear Chopper, I hear that. There's also a very good Australian comedian who made a, I mean, this is way before the Eric Bana film, which is great as well. but like he made like a career out of just being Chopper. And there's this amazing sketch where Chopper goes to to a job interview, and they ask him all these questions. But the best one is like, so what do you bring to the job? Well, I got a 9mm. I got a baseball bat, a stick of gelignite. It's really fun. Anyway, so apparently they installed this China Chopper web shell. Microsoft identified Hafnium as a, quote, highly skilled and sophisticated actor, end quote, that historically has mostly targeted, quote, entities in the United States for the purpose of exfiltrating information from a number of industry sectors, including infectious disease researchers, law firms, higher education institutions, defense contractors, policy think tanks, and NGOs, end quote. Announcing the hack, Microsoft stated that this was, quote, the 8th time in the past 12 months that Microsoft has publicly disclosed nation-state groups targeting institutions critical to civil society, end quote. And there you have it. Once again, nation-state groups. I have no fucking, like, as I said in the previous episode, I mean, what the fuck is it with this state-sponsored shit? If you get hacked, if your organization gets hacked, you don't fucking care, right? Somebody just stole your trade secrets. Do you care if it was the Chinese or the Russians? Like, seriously? No. The only thing you care is that your secrets are not your secrets anymore. Like, you got defrauded. You got malware installed on your systems. You got ransomware installed on your system, crypto miners, whatever. Who the fuck cares if it was the Russians or the Chinese or the North Koreans or the Germans or the Ugandan or the Australians or who the fuck? I mean, it doesn't matter. The only reason, I'm going to have this rant once more because I think it's very important. The only reason companies, and especially Microsoft, keeps shouting state-sponsored is they want to detract from the fact that they themselves have fucked up. They fucked up big time. Exchange security is a disaster. People have known this for decades. It's shit. Microsoft took way too long to come up with this patch. They deployed this patch badly. The whole like security culture within Exchange. We're gonna get into that a little bit at the end here, but like it's just wrong. That's like they fucked up. Like that is the important thing. And I actually have an issue with journalists just mindlessly like regurgitate, like, you know, Microsoft, some other company, they or like a security company, right? They will write in their press release, it's a Chinese state-sponsored actor. Microsoft does this to detract from that they fucked up. The government does that, like the intelligence services do that, as I said, you know, I talked about last episode or the episode before that. The cyber war episode, they do that to detract from the fact that they're fucked up. Security companies do it because it sounds amazing. It's like immediately a story, right? You just found some random hacker, who cares? Some script kiddie. Oh, the Chinese are hacking us? Oh my god, it's the Chinese. It's the Chinese! Makes it a story, right? That's why they do it. That's why they are doing that. But as a journalist, you shouldn't be going and just willy-nilly just like, you know, just making that your own. Because you have to ask yourself when you write a story, like, why do my readers care? Or my listeners? Right? It's a good headline. Yes, okay, maybe. But why is it a good headline? Should that be? I think as readers, as consumers of media, we should ask this ourselves. Why is that a good headline? Why do we care? Do we care that it was the Chinese? Who gives a fuck? Right? Do we want to strike back? I don't want anybody to strike back. I want less hacking going on, not more hacking. And you can see that this escalating shit isn't helping. Right? It's the Russians put their dick on the table, then the Chinese put their dick on the table, then the Americans put their dick on the table. We've seen where this leads, like in normal warfare, in cold warfare, and now we're seeing it in cyber warfare. Just stop with this shit already. It doesn't help anybody. And the press isn't helping either by just perpetrating and regurgitating this fucking bullshit again and again and again. What you should be looking at, what you should be talking about is that Exchange, the thing running email in all of these companies, is shit. Has shit security, has a shit security culture, gets patched way too late by Microsoft. That's what we should be looking at. And, there's several people who said, when I was reading about this, I was listening to podcasts, I was watching internet, streams and whatever. Basically, what I do instead of watching TV. And there were lots of experts, IT security people, who were saying, and I agree with this, that one of the issues is that there's a lot of companies that run Exchange that don't need to run Exchange. It's completely overkill for them. It's just because some CEO somewhere says, I want Outlook, because he's at the drinking club at night, with all the other CEOs sipping port and smoking cigars or drinking whiskey or whatever. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I got the Exchange. And then I can actually click here and then it tells me when somebody read the email. Isn't that amazing? It's got all these calendar features. You should have Exchange. Why don't you have Exchange? Right? And then lots of companies actually don't need that. And they would be better off using some, open source email server maybe. Something more bare bones, which doesn't get owned by 4 0 days at once. I'm not saying, open source email systems are without their problems and are inherently better. But I mean, Exchange is a mess. And we can see this because it might have started with the Chinese, but it didn't stop with the Chinese. So I'm not gonna read all this out. So, ESET figured out that suddenly there are multiple state-sponsored hackers that are exploiting this after the news came out. This was on the 2nd of March. So as soon as the patch is out, it's a free-for-all. The Russians go, oh look, Chinese have Exchange hack. Why did we not find 0 day? It doesn't matter. 0 day is out now. People are not patching. Let's exfiltrate some information. Right? And then the North Koreans, I don't even know what a North Korean accent would be. And then the Germans go, let's hack some servers. Yes, we can look what the Danish are doing. Maybe the Efterings hasn't patched their servers. Let's have a look. So everybody's doing this. Then of course there was crypto mining. Now this is hilarious. I'm going to read that out because it's just this is what Microsoft spends their time on instead of patching Exchange. On the 10th of March 2021, security researcher Nguyen Yang posted proof of concept code to Microsoft-owned GitHub on how the exploit works, totaling 169 lines of code. That's how easy it was. 169 lines. Right? There's mouse pointer animations in Windows that use more lines of code. The program was intentionally written with errors so that while security researchers could understand how the exploit works, the goal, malicious actors would not be able to use the code to access servers. So that's a bit bullshit, of course, because you're presuming they're all script kiddies, right? If security researchers can figure out where the errors are, then these guys doesn't matter. Later that day, GitHub removed the code as it, quote, contains proof of concept code for a recent disclosed vulnerability that has been actively exploited. Oh no! On the 13th of March, another group independently published exploit code, with this code instead requiring minimal modifications to work. The third coordination centers Will Dorman said, quote, the exploit is completely out of the bag now in response. So Microsoft pulling why? I mean, this is a week after. So a week after you published a patch, right? And the problem being your users are trained to not install patches. So lots of systems already aren't patched. That's your problem. So a security researcher goes, everybody's attacking everybody. And people are not patching their systems. So the only, we need to get this information to people, how this exploit works, and post it on GitHub. And then Microsoft's they pull it off that's what they spend their time on, instead of figuring out how they get their fucking users to patch their fucking systems, which is the problem. I mean, it's not that some guy posts some exploit code. I mean, the exploit code's been out there. It's been exploited since the 2nd of January. We now have the 10th of March. If it's too late now, it's too late. The cat's out of the bag. Unbelievable. That's Microsoft for you. That's like sometimes they still act like the Microsoft in the 1990s. When Barmer was going like Linux is a cancer, when they were thinking like, you can just make that truth go away if you just have good PR and you just you can just make people not realize what is going on. It's a head shaker. Anyway, what else happened? Oh, yeah, then, of course, ESET identified at least 10 advanced persistent threat groups. I don't actually like that term. And so an APT is just like a bad hack. So they, professional hackers. They identified at least 10 groups of professional hackers compromising IT, cybersecurity, energy, software development, public utility, real estate, telecommunication, and engineering businesses, as well as Middle Eastern and South American governmental agencies. Woohoo! Fun. Now, this is interesting. Also, like this on Wikipedia, the attacks came shortly after the 2020 United States federal government data breaches we talked about last time, which also saw the compromising of Microsoft Outlook web app and supply chain Microsoft's. Sorry, which also saw I can't read. Which also saw the compromising of Microsoft's Outlook web app and supply chain. Microsoft said there was no connection between the two incidents. Yeah, except for Microsoft being dumb. Yeah, right. No connection at all, except all your email servers are like fucked now. So what the hell? Like, what the hell is going on with like, why was this so successful? Like, why were so many servers owned? Like, even weeks after, right now, their servers being exploited, even though the patch has been out for like a month now, almost. So why is that? So Wikipedia says it's actually a good condensed description of the situation, I think. Automatic updates are typically, so this is talking about Exchange, right? And Exchange servers. Automatic updates are typically disabled. Just think about that, right? Think about how long Windows has had forcing automatic updates. How long, like, browsers are doing that. Like anything, your phone. Automatic updates are typically disabled by server administrators to avoid disruption from downtime and problems in software, and are by convention installed manually by server administrators after these updates are tested with the existing software and server setup. As smaller organizations often operate under a smaller budget to do this in-house or otherwise outsource this to local IT providers without expertise in cybersecurity. This is often not done until it becomes a necessity, if ever. So until you're fucked, and then it's too late. This means small and medium businesses in local institutions such as schools and local governments are known to be the primary victims of the attack. Yeah, schools, I know from personal experience how fucked these guys are known to be the primary victims of the attack, as they are more likely to not have received updates to patch the exploit. Rural victims are noted to be, quote, largely on their own, end quote, as they are typically without access to IT service providers. The attack was discovered after attackers were discovered downloading all emails belonging to specific users on separate corporate Exchange servers. An undisclosed Washington think tank reported that attackers sending convincing emails to contacts in a social engineering attack that encouraged recipients to click on a link. So you have a situation where, things are not patched for reasons, and then it's email service, so you can do social, engineering, and nobody, that's something that's very hard to defend against in a normal environment, in a normal company, a normal organization. Now the problem here with the problem that Microsoft needs to fix is obviously their update mechanism for Exchange is shit and is not worthy of 2021. If you have an email server, You should have updates that people can install automatically. You should have a system, a way of organizing that, of deploying these updates that don't cause downtime for the servers, right? If you have 2 email servers, there should be a way to like take one offline, have the other one be the primary one, install the update, test the update, see that everything's right, bring the one up, use that, and then install it on the secondary server, right? We live in times of like, people like to throw this term at me, Docker and Kubernetes and the cloud and all this CI and all this smart DevOps, all this crap, and they can't get like their fucking email server patching to work? Like, what the fuck? That's the problem. That's the problem you need to fix. Stop talking about the Chinese. Stop talking about the Russians. Stop talking how bad it is. Like, that is your problem, Microsoft. That's where you fucked up. And I don't want blame on any, like, administrators. Like, the normal admins, the IT security guys in companies. Yes, some of them are a pain in the ass if you work for the company. It's all, they're charged with security. People that are charged with security have to be a pain in the ass sometimes. And sometimes, you got good and bad people. But in general, it's not the admin's fault. Like, they do this shit for a reason. Because they used to install the updates automatically. And then the whole thing went down and nobody had emails for a day. And then they got sent to the CEO office and roasted, got a spike stuck in their ass and got roasted over an open fire in front of the company board. And then they vowed to never automatically install updates again. There's a reason these policies exist. It's not their fault, by and large, right? It's Microsoft. It's their fucking update mechanism. And I mean, if one would be like a conspiracy theorist, I don't think this is a conspiracy theory. I think this is just common sense. I think Microsoft doesn't give a fuck about this, because I think Microsoft wants, that's why they call it on-premise. It's like legacy. Like, who wants to use that? They want to get you into the cloud. And I bet you, if this hack wouldn't have been immediately preceded by a hack where Microsoft's cloud email service fucked up and got owned, and then we're trying to brush that under the carpet, under the rug, make that disappear. If that hadn't happened, there would be as part of the PR push on this hack, state sponsor, blah, 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 they would go, yeah, it's because you're using on-premise. You should really use the cloud, right? You should use the secure email from Microsoft. The only reason they aren't doing that is because then people, wait a minute, didn't that get hacked basically a month earlier? Right? So I don't think they want to spend time on this. They don't want to fix this. They want to get you into the cloud. Now the problem is the cloud's fucked as well, as we've seen. That's doesn't work. And of course, it doesn't. This makes it sound like, yeah, okay, maybe some government organizations and the small companies got hit, but we just had last week or whatever, we had the news that a ransomware gang called REvil has claimed that they actually infiltrated Acer with this, and they were actually demanding $50 million, which I think Acer didn't pay, and it was supposed, yesterday was the 20th, yeah, it was supposed to go up to $100 million. So not only the small guys in government got hit, also big companies. On the 11th of March 2021, Checkpoint Research revealed that in the prior 24 hours, quote, the number of exploitation attempts on organization it tracks tripled every 2 to 3 hours. So this is on the 11th. This is a week after the patch. So there you can see the problem, right? Just compare that to Windows, and Windows has these problems, but just compare that to Windows. When Windows 10, you can say a lot of things about Windows 10. It's privacy problems, the whole telemetry stuff, but it's gotten people to actually update their system. I mean, yeah, it sometimes reboots your system in the middle of a live stream, but in generally, it has caused people to install updates much more diligently and just basically force them to. I mean, this is almost as bad as Android security, where with some device manufacturers, you don't get updates. And then, like, the only reason Android isn't exploited on this scale is just, like, it's not such a high-value target, right? Email servers are just much more juicy. Maybe it's being exploited by intelligence services that we don't know. Anyway, not getting updates, security updates to vulnerabilities that are known is a problem. Hello? You know, welcome to 2002. Checkpoint Research has observed the United States as being the most attacked country with 17% of all exploit attempts, followed by Germany. Yes, we're number 2. Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit. With 6% in the United Kingdom and the Netherlands, both at 5%, and Russia with 4%. So yeah, it's probably the Chinese of all exploits. Government/military is the most targeted sector, with 23% of exploit attempts, followed by manufacturing at 15%, banking and financial services at 14%, software vendors with 7%, and healthcare at 6%. Yeah, so probably it sounds like it's all plausible. Could be the Chinese. I'm buying that. I don't really care, to be honest. But before we end this topic, I just want to leave you with a laugh. Just so you know, politicians, right? On the 7th of March 2021, CNN reported that the Biden administration was expected to form a task force to address the breach. The Biden administration has invited private sector organizations to participate in the task force and will provide them with classified information as deemed necessary. What fucking classified information? What task force? Like, Microsoft is shit in deploying their patches. What do you want to do? Legislate Microsoft to, like, hello, Joe? Hello? Are you listening? What the fuck, man? Like, this is not needed. It's politicians. They're making things worse when it's already too late. Like, they're already too late to help, and now they're making it. This is just, like, what the hell? Like, what's going to be they're going to go, oh no, we can't let the Chinese attack us. We need a cyber, we need a firewall, or we need to outlaw encryption, or they're going to do bullshit like that. Like, what you need to do is invite less private sector organizations, because they're the ones buying this bullshit from Microsoft and either using, like, Microsoft Exchange and getting owned, or then they go, oh no, let's go to Microsoft's cloud, that's more secure, and then they're also getting owned. Like, what the fuck? What we need is the press to call out and people to call out what actually happened here. Microsoft fucked up, as they fucked up in the Solarwinds breach. And the intelligence services fucked up. I mean, the NSA got owned in Solarwinds. We talked about this, right? The NSA got owned. They used the software that got owned where they didn't know, like, they need to get called out. The next time Microsoft says, oh, you should switch to Office 365, our email is so secure, like, 50 people need to stand up. All the journalists need to write and, make videos and talk about, no, you're not. Remember Solarwinds? No. And also Exchange is also crap. So maybe use something open source. I don't know. Maybe we need a new email server, a secure email server, something that is standardized and not like this bullshit like Exchange where it has all these like these things that are non-standard email. Like, okay, rant incoming, like nerd rant here, right? What the fuck is it with Exchange and Outlook? Like, have you ever, as a normal email user, gotten this email where, like, somebody said something really stupid in the email or something they weren't supposed to say, they broke an embargo or something, and then they're sending you an email telling you, oh no, we want to retract that email. Like, what the fuck is that? You can't retract emails. It's been sent. Like, yes, you can retract them once they're in there. It's still in your Exchange universe, whatever, with its bullshit. Like, there's no standard. It went out to the internet. You can't retract it. My email client is not gonna go, hey, oh, this has been retracted. I'm not gonna show you this email. Like, what the fuck? And that's been like in Outlook and in Exchange for ages. That's just like, I don't get it. I seriously, that's the problem. We need lean. We need email, right? We don't need, I'm going to do an episode. I'm pretty sure now people want me to talk about this. I think it's very important. We need to do an episode about why email is important. Why email has privacy problems, but email is important. Email is one of the last open interoperable standards we have. It's not like this fucking Discord stuff, which is going to be bought by Microsoft or whatever, and all these messengers which are closed and then they're censored, and they can spy on you, and they can do things that you don't want. Like, it's an open standard. It's federated. That's what we need. What we just need is software that wasn't written in 1985 and was written in programming languages from 1985 with programming standards from 1985, or like Microsoft Exchange, like basically patched from whenever I don't know how long Exchange's been around, but patched for like 30 years and never like properly rewritten with modern standards. And that's the problem. That's what we need to fix. Like, we need good security. We need companies that are, or projects that are proactive towards security, that are not relying on security by obscurity, that fix things the moment they hear of it, and not go, let's hold on to this patch for like 3 weeks till our like weekly patch, monthly patch date comes around. Like, no, fix it now. Fix it yesterday. Somebody tells you have like 0 days, or like a really critical vulnerability in an email server that's all around the world. Like, fix it yesterday. Okay. Gonna stop with the ranting now. And we're now gonna talk about the feedback. Okay, Redeemer says, exactly, retract works when the recipient is also on an Exchange server, but yes, it's quite silly when you already have the email and you get the retraction request. That's all I see. I've never been in an Exchange server in my life, and I'm trying my best to never do that. Right, now we're going to talk about some feedback. As I explained in the beginning of the show, if I do something wrong or if you have another viewpoint, please write to me. It's content, and we have content here by producer Yevgeny Kuznetsov from Moscow, who at first wrote in to tell me, I'm not going to quote that, but he was basically telling me that my Russian is bad, which shouldn't surprise anybody. But apparently I was mispronouncing opachki. The stress, I am told, is on the O. It's going to be opachki. Opachki. No, that's wrong again. Opachki. I hope that's good. If that's still bad, I need a Russian to send me a sound file that I can put on my soundboard, and then we go, opach. Actually, I could just extract that from Escape from Tarkov, right? I just need to get at the sound files. Wait, I'm going to write that down. Extract opachki from Tarkov. I mean, that could come in handy. We can use that in all kinds of situations. That's maybe I can also get like the soundbite of Putin that one time when he was playing the piano and singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy." That was hilarious. They use that on No Agenda all the time. Anyway, let's talk about something interesting. Yevgeny, writing from Moscow, says, I wanted to chip in regarding vaccines, actually. So we're on the vaccine topic again. In Russia, as well as in some other post-Soviet countries, I know for sure about Ukraine and Uzbekistan, perhaps several others too. It is a legal requirement for a kid wishing to attend a state-financed kindergarten or a state-financed school that the said kid is vaccinated against several diseases, or that the kid has a, quote, proper reason not to be vaccinated. Quote, proper reasons include medical contraindications to vaccination, but exclude parents' refusal. I can't remember the whole list of the required vaccines right away, but these are like things like polio, tuberculosis and measles, basically. So yeah, I talked about this in the past. We have this in Germany too. I don't think it's so much a legal requirement. It's just like, enforced by kindergartens. So I was vaccinated as a kid against everything that was kind of like, I wouldn't say legally required, but basically they kind of forced you to do. Although I don't think it was as strict as it was in Russia. It is not illegal for a parent to refuse to have their child vaccinated, but then they cannot attend state-sponsored schools, seeing as how state-sponsored schools are free of charge to attend. Private schools with all the required certificates are still uncommon. It's like in Germany, especially outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg, and expensive. And that giving your child a state-recognized basic education, a 9-year school level, is legal obligation for every parent in Russia. Being an anti-vaxxer is not that easy. Actually, same thing in Germany, although the schools actually don't enforce that. Because actually they can't do that because the German constitution says that education should be free and available to everybody. So I think they can kind of do it in kindergarten, but they can't exclude, because you, as a parent, you're legally required to send your kid to school. They can't go, if you don't vaccinate it, they have to take your child, basically. I mean, I know that could be turned on its head, where you're like, no, that means you have to vaccinate, like it's obviously being done in Russia. I have a feeling that's going to change in the future in Germany as well, but currently it's not like that. The argument is basically that vaccinating every kid can safely be The argument is basically that vaccinating every kid that can safely be vaccinated helps reduce the chance of a non-vaccinated kid to contract the disease, since everybody around that kid is vaccinated and less likely to spread the disease for a long period of time, even if they got it somewhere and have serious problems or even die, which they are more likely if they get sick because of the medical issues that prevented them getting vaxxed in the first place. Yeah, see, I don't believe in that. I said in the beginning, I don't think there's good scientific evidence for that. I think it's just, if you vaccinate everybody, then they can get the disease and not get sick. And it depends on the disease, I think. I'm prepared to believe. I'm prepared to understand from data that with some diseases, it would actually cause you to not being able to spread it or easily spread it. The problem with SARS-CoV-2 is that they haven't shown that, and I would like to see that. But I'm not saying... When somebody says, and when somebody in the press writes, yes, everybody needs to get vaccinated because then it stops the spread of the disease, that could very well be right. But I would like to see data that backs that up. That's my only point. And now Yevgeny is actually... in Twitch chat, which is amazing. I'm loving Twitch today. And Janua Vera says, check Israel data if you have doubt. I don't have doubt. I have not seen any data. If you have any data, as I said several times before, privatecitizen.press, contact details are there. Please send it to me. Please don't send me any, some news organization wrote about this. Please send me primary sources. Send me a PubMed link, and I'll figure it out. I'll get the paper. I'll read the paper. I'll understand the paper. Now the thing is, I know that there's many places on the web where people are saying this is how it works. My problem is backing it up. I've also seen papers. People have linked me to papers who said, this makes it clear. And you read the paper and it doesn't. It's like, yeah, that's their, that's what they say their data indicates. But I haven't seen any data that would stand up to rigorous scientific standards. I think a big problem right now is that, obviously there's lots being published on this topic, because if you publish on this topic, it just gets quoted everywhere and you get, you get scientific accolades, but I also think there's a lot of scientists, sadly, that I talk to, are prepared to go yeah, that's a paper that says that, and they're they're not skeptical, they're not going, we have to check that, and that doesn't mean you're like a conspiracy theorist or you have doubt or whatever. That's just being a scientist. Being a scientist is, if you're interested in the topic or you're working in the topic, you can't just go, hey, they published a paper. If you write a paper on the topic and somebody else has written a paper, you have to read that. You have to understand it and you have to take it apart, because either it doesn't even matter if it agrees with your hypothesis or not. Like, there's two things you can do. You have to quote it in your paper, and you can either say they're wrong and then you have to show why, or you can say you're right and you're building on their stuff. And that is, you want to make sure that they're right, because if you're building on their stuff and it later turns out that they were full of shit, then your fucking paper falls apart as well. Actually, I've been planning for ages to do an episode on, kind of like I did an episode on socialism. Sometimes I do this off-topic things. I'm going to do an episode on the scientific method, just very basic, because I feel a lot of people are just getting it. Anyway, nice to see you, Evgeny. I'm giving my best to pronouncing Opachki correctly, and I just say, maybe I need a sound. I'm going to try to extract it from Tarkov. There's obviously Russian voice actors saying it a lot, so it's got to be in there somewhere. I just got to get to hack the files. Anyway, where were we? So you'll quote me being born in the USSR and having a broken mindset as a result again, but I must confess I think the argument is valid. I'm not an anti-vaxxer anyway. Me and my wife just had our newborn vaxxed against several things, including non-mandatory ones. No, I don't think if I said that, that wasn't what I meant. Obviously, if you're born in a Soviet country, you have a different outlook. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. I think in some respects it's wrong, but I think on this point we can just disagree. I think I just haven't seen any data that convinces me, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, my biggest complaint is not this being an argument for vaccination. But my biggest complaint is if I read in the press that somebody says, writes an article and says the science says, the experts say, the paper XYZ says that this is happening. I want a link, or I want data. I want to read that and then think, okay, let's see where they got that idea from and check that. And I haven't found a single person doing that was falling. Like, I've talked to colleagues who've written articles about this, and then I said, okay, so this is your point. Like, where do you get this from? Like, where's this paper from? And then they say something, and I realize they don't understand what they're talking about. Just, it drives me insane. And I'm not infallible. I get antigens and antibodies mixed up all the time, as we already talked about today. Yevgeny says, an episode on the scientific method would be awesome. And your Opachki is much better. No, I'm giving my best. I would love to. Actually, I was thinking I would love to have somebody on for that. I don't know. I need a scientist who's happy to talk to me about this kind of thing. I'll try to. I need somebody who speaks English and who wants to come on a podcast. I would love to debate this a little bit as well. And then, of course, Evgeny can write in and tell me where I'm wrong, which is awesome, which is content. Anyway, continuing in his message. However, I'll be postponing my anti-COVID vaccine. You mean your anti-SARS-CoV-2 vaccine? Sorry, it's just a pet peeve of mine. For as long as I realistically can, which will likely be not very long since the university I work at is increasing the pressure. I don't think my chances of getting a severe case of COVID-19 with really bad long-term effects are high. I'm 38 in 2 weeks. Oh, that's just basically my age group. And relatively healthy, even if overweight and enjoying a good ale a bit more frequent than I perhaps should. Don't we all, Evgeny? I don't like the data on vaccines, or rather lack thereof, and I seriously don't trust the vaccines I'm offered. I do have contacts in the institutions that develop those, and what I hear from them makes me even less enthusiastic. Yeah, so I think he's talking about the Sputnik vaccine, which of course we talked about earlier in the show, because I was wrong on the AstraZeneca one, and that's the same way. And I just want that one question answered. I want a regulator tell me, if you give that vaccine to somebody, and if they can theoretically, like, that DNA or if that vector can theoretically be incorporated in your DNA, which the Oxford and AstraZeneca people are not denying, and I'm pretty sure the Russian developed vaccine people are not denying either. How is it these people are not classed as genetically modified organisms? I want that answered first and foremost. Because, I'm not actually caring, but I don't think it's dangerous. I don't think they can answer that because I think they skipped that. I think they don't care. I think they wanted to get that vaccine out. And I think that's what Yevgeny is getting at as well. I don't think that's good. Because who knows what the long-term effects of that, like everybody's, long-term effects of COVID. Yeah, who knows what the long-term effects of that is? Maybe it's nothing, but maybe the long-term effects of COVID are, nobody talks about, that's another thing, long-term effects of COVID. Nobody talks about the long-term effects of influenza. Those are well known. If you look in the scientific literature, there's literature going back 60, 70, 80 years, back to the Spanish flu of long-term effects of an influenza. Nobody, people just call that chronic lung disease. Oh yeah, you have you got influenza when you were 24, you got over it, now you have chronic lung disease for the rest of your life. That was the classic thing, right? Yeah, it happens to some people. Happens to 0.1% of people who get it. Who cares? Now it's oh no, long-term effects of COVID, we're all gonna die. It's just that double standards that just drives me insane. I was writing that on the phone while walking. I mean, this is perfect. I just can't read. Maybe I had a bit too much of the wine from the Rhineland-Palatinate. Actually enjoying this live feedback. This is why I like Twitch. This works out really well. I hope this is also good for the people listening to it on the podcast. So hello, future Yevgeny, when you're walking your kid and you're listening to that. You mean the SARS-CoV-2 COVID mix-up? Yeah, totally. I was not guessing. I was it's just, they printed on the fucking tests and on the vaccine. It's wrong on the vaccine. I've lost that battle. I've lost that battle. A piece of trivia regarding transmittable diseases and immunities in Russia, also regarding regulations and enforcement, just for your amusement. To be allowed to be present at my daughter's birth, i.e. in the room, I was required to have 3 documents. One, obviously, a negative test result for COVID-19 or a doctor's note that I had already had it, but that's the times we live in. True. The other 2 were a recent chest scan to prove I had no tuberculosis and a recent lab result for measles antibodies. Yes, antibodies. Lack of measles doesn't count. You have to be immune. Okay. You better hope the vaccine actually, I don't know. Do you have measles? This is actually interesting. I don't know about this, but do you have measles antibodies that, you take that vaccine once, right? Or it's a refresher. You take it when you're young and then when you're 6 or whatever, and then you take, I don't know. But do you have antibodies that long? That's interesting, actually. And these 2 have been a requirement all along since the USSR. Thanks, Tovarish Stalin. That was probably wrong. It's probably bad Russian again. You're supposed to get a refresher's measles vaccine. Yeah, I know about that, but this is that's when you're 6 or whatever, or even when you're 18 or whatever. It's amazing that you still have that 20 years later. It's not vaccines are different, obviously. Because with the SARS-CoV-2 vaccines, it's just you probably only have antibodies for a few months, which doesn't mean you're not immune, because there's memory cells and stuff, and your body can just reproduce those antibodies when needed. But here comes the funny part: my wife ended up having a C-section, and I ended up in the OR with her. I had the 3 papers on me in my jeans back pocket. I was never asked to produce them. Go figure. Actually, this is very, very. Very Russian, I think. This is in Germany, that would have been checked. In Germany, we would have checked that. And I say in West Germany, right? In West Germany, we would have checked that. I've recently reflected that actually a lot of I personally think, I haven't lived in Eastern Germany. We had relations there. But obviously, I was 6 when the wall fell, right? So I have some dim memories, but I didn't really live in the time. But what I've read and in history and stuff, I feel like actually our society here, at least in Germany, is turning somewhat into the DDR, the German Democratic Republic, GDR, we call it DDR, East German mindset, where like there were in Soviet Germany, there was so much stuff forbidden, there were so many laws that you couldn't possibly like check them all and adhere to them all, right? There were all this stuff. They had this thing called, so it's a famous German term called Bückware, which means it's wares that are sold when you're bending over, where they had this stuff that was sold under the counter, which they weren't allowed to sell, but everybody was selling. There were all these people, like you weren't allowed to have, like you weren't supposed to have like private property, right? And you weren't supposed to have special things that other people didn't have. You weren't allowed to, you weren't supposed to sell that, but people did. So there were actually people that were richer than other people in socialist Germany, and it was all this stuff where like they spied on everybody, but you'd look away like for certain things because you knew nobody could, like, if you actually locked everybody up who didn't adhere to the laws 100%, you'd have to lock everybody up. So there were all these unspoken rules. And I see exactly the same thing here, where now you have to wear masks all the time. You have to do that. But you see people like, they're just basically wearing the mask pro forma. They don't have their nose covered. There's all this stuff. There's like these ridiculous laws where you just basically, people who do certain jobs, they now have to follow certain rules that like make their job basically impossible. So they just like skirt the edge of it, and everybody knows, and like nobody is calling them out on it because the guy can't do his job, and I don't know, you want your haircut or whatever. So it's actually very interesting to me. So this is actually Yevgeny, I enjoyed very much when you write in. I enjoy that perspective. And I often disagree with you, but I find your messages very valuable, and I often put them on the show because I feel we don't have this perspective in Western Europe, especially in Germany. Russia has painted it as this evil again, and in the US to some degree as well. I think it's important for the people who listen to the show to have this perspective. And it's very it's very important to me. I would actually I don't know if Yevgeny needs to do this, but like having spoken about like cyber war, we're going to move on to other topics now with the next episode. But having talked about this and the stereotypically Russian hacker TM. I would like somebody who's listening to this from Russia, and maybe it has to be Yevgeny. I don't know. All the other Russians seem to be shy, which is understandable in the political climate. I would like a Russian to tell me like what that feels to them. Like, sit down and maybe write a paragraph or whatever. Like, the stereotypically Russian hacker. What does that feel like? Does it feel like Yevgeny? Exactly. Yeah. We'll have to. I don't think this is something for Twitch yet. I think we'll have to. I'd like to have some longer form information on that. Like, I've been asking myself that. It's kind of like when as a German you watch like these movies about World War II. Like there's all these it's all these German stereotype. I wonder if it's a little bit like that. Whereas it's probably not that. Just like the German, I can live with that because. I mean, we did very horrible things, and we deserved if the worst thing that happens to me is that I'm mocked for it because of my accent, I'm totally okay with that. But like I do wonder how people in Russia who obviously speak English and read international news think about this being painted as the bad guys. It's very. Very interested to me. Yevgeny actually said, I have to read this out because it's about Jasinski, who's the guy who founded the NKVD, which later became the KGB. This is why the square where, the famous the square is called Jasinski Square. A famous quote from Jasinski, the Russian first head of the NKVD, future KGB. Give me a person, I'll find the law article that the person broke as to imprison them. If you have enough restrictions, you can just randomly punish people. You as the state don't like. That's so very true. And I mean, that's not even that's a thing. Like German law is so complex. Like I once saw this YouTube video of a lecture from an American law professor where he's talking about like all these laws and how basically like if you like in a random federal state in the US, if you just enforced all the laws, like all the laws on the books, like especially like their legal system's even worse in that regard than the German one, which is like the Roman law, like common law, like in the UK or in the US is even worse. Like they have all these laws on the books. Like you couldn't do like literally anything. You'd get like all the stuff. There's like federal states where like, I don't know, owning a horse is illegal, but only if it's like if you have that much land, or it's like weird. There's like it's all this stuff, and I think all these countries have it. So I don't think for me it's a thing I think about because obviously East Germany was particularly egregious in that. And it also, like the other thing that's coming back to me, it had pretty much I think this was a German peculiarity of the Soviet Republic. I don't think all the other Soviet republics were specifically like this, but Germany specifically, I think because of the interlocking with the German culture, had a very specific denunciation thing, right? Where you had these people, Blockwart, where you had these guys. I mean, you had the Stasi was basically everywhere, but you had these people who weren't like real Stasi operatives, but were just collaborating, which is like, there's a German thing where like even in free democracy, you have like old ladies looking down the street going, what is going on there? And then they report, you have to report it. In the UK, there's a term, it's a curtain. There's a term for it. I forgot about it. But it's like, you have these people and they basically used these people as like unofficial operatives, as informants. And it worked very well for them. And that's something I see now as well. Like people denunciating their neighbors because, oh my God, there's one, they're having a party in their garden and there's one person from a household more than is allowed. Yevgeny Fadi says, but don't old ladies everywhere do that? Maybe, but like in Germany, it's not only old ladies. In Germany, it's a very specific, and I catch myself doing it sometimes. And my wife will beat it out of me with a metal rod, and so she should, because I don't want to be like that. It's a bad thing. Anyway, yes, that's it for the feedback. I thought Yevgeny provided so much that I really couldn't. I wanted to feature that front and center, and for the reasons I thought very important. Janua Vera was also on Twitch, in Twitch chat, chiming in about we had a few deaths due to measles in France 2 years ago. They were not vaccinated, and more cases of measles due to measles vaccine not enforced enough. Yeah, I mean, I know about measles coming back. I mean, the plague's coming back. They had a black plague case in Mongolia like last year. I think it's without question that vaccinating people helps, and it helps with suppressing the disease outbreaks. But the myth that is perpetrated in the press that it eradicates disease is obviously wrong. Like even the smallpox has come back, right? We haven't eradicated a single disease, even though the WHO has pretended that was the case for a very long time. But the data actually says that's wrong. But that's actually not like that's not the point. My point is not. So it's like masks. It's like I think it's pretty clear that it works. I want to know how much, right? If you legislate stuff, and if you take people's, and this is where we come back to the normal topic of the podcast again. If you take people's rights away, and you say you do that, that's what's even like, that's what I find even like charming about the Soviet state. They weren't saying like it's generally, I mean, it was also propaganda, but they weren't like, oh, it's science-based. They're like, it's socialism. They were pretending that was science, but it wasn't really science and everybody knew it, but they were like, we're just doing this. The problem is we're a democracy and we're doing this based on alleged science. And people are saying, oh, the science says this. But like, if you're saying we are doing this to we need to take rights that people have got accustomed to away for the better of society based on scientific data, fair enough. I want to see the data. You just can't say masks work. You need to specify what masks, right, in what surrounding, how does it work? How much percent? Like, we need studies. There's no hard studies because they're hard to do. I understand why they don't have that data, because that data is basically impossible to get. But you can't pretend just the data is there. Same with vaccination. You can't just pretend just because somebody did a study in the Congo in the 80s, go like, hey, woo. And then it's like the double standards are a problem. If you make laws like that, like laws, the understanding of justice in a rule of law state, in a democracy, basically assumes you do not have double standards, right? So why do we have these rules about one disease, SARS-CoV-2, and not the other, influenza? Like, where's the line? Like, is there a line? Is it people's how do we quantify how dangerous this is? So why do we have these rules about COVID, but we don't have them about AIDS? Right? Why didn't we go around in the 90s and said, well, if you are HIV positive, the state says you can't have sex, and if you have sex with somebody, you go to jail. That's for the better of society. Why didn't we do that? Right? And you need to quantify that. You can't just make laws and say, oh, science says this, or we're just going to do this now. And it's obvious that all these rules, like a lot of these rules, don't make sense. And it's obvious that they're not based on science. A lot of these things were instigated at a time last year. I mean, I talked about this live on the podcast. Listen to episode like 10 of the show, 5 of the show. I talked about all of this when it came in. We didn't know anything. Like, we know precious little about this, how this spreads now. But like, we didn't know anything. And they were admitting that they were making these rules arbitrarily, just like as a shot into the blue. But now it's a year later, and I don't understand how people can accept this, like this new normal. It's now normal. No, it's horrible, and we need to start asking questions. Anyway, I'm going to stop with this now. We had the feedback. I'm going to round up the show now because, I mean, if you don't like rants, you've turned off by now. If you like rants, you're welcome. Janua Vera says there are no 100% in biology. Yes, exactly. But what percents are there? I want data, right? That's the whole point. Experiments, data, look at them. Right. If you like rants and you've gotten something out of this, the only thing I asked, like if you haven't, you're not listening anymore. So I'm going to presume you like this. If you got something out of this information, it made you think. It made your blood boil. Maybe you need this in the morning to wake up. Listen to Fab, how he's wrong. First of all, write in, please. privatecitizen.press. But also, I provide this for free as a service to the community. All I ask is that you think about, does it provide value to you? And if it does, consider giving some back. This is called the value for value model. It's pioneered by John C. Dvorak and Adam Curry on the No Agenda Show. Meanwhile, taking over by a lot of podcasts, including mine. It's basically, you get it for free. You don't have to feel bad. But if you want to give something back, you can. I have a Patreon page. You can become a patron. Or you can just use PayPal. Producers@fab.industries, the PayPal address. But it's also in the show notes. at privatecitizen.press, and you should probably go there and not, type the email address wrong. Basically, have a look at how it's also complicated because .industries is the TLD, and some people are still confused by that, even though these kind of TLDs have been a thing now for, is it all 7 years, 8 years? It's been a long time. Yes, and if you want to do that, please do so. And I have to thank everybody. If you have any information, if you want to send me studies, if you want to send me links to PubMed, and please do that. Please send me. That's the scientific process. I'm smart enough. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm smart enough to generally understand primary sources. So please send me those. Don't send me any, articles. I mean, they do help sometimes, but if you read something in an article and they don't link primary sources and you can't find them, send me the article. But generally that will be mostly a waste of my time. I want, when we're talking about something like this, primary sources, and if we're talking about medical science, that would mean a PubMed link generally. And then I'll figure it out. If I can't figure it out, I'm going to talk to somebody who knows the topic, and I'm going to have them explain it to me. Anyway, thanks to anybody who's done that, who've sent in stuff, your producers of the show, stuff like, Evgeny writing me from Moscow and writing me his viewpoint is very valuable to me. So I enjoy that very much. Of course, then there's also the people we just talked about who chip in and support the show monetarily, which is important to me because I'm a freelance journalist. We don't make that much money, and I'm spending a lot of time doing this kind of stuff where I could do other stuff where I could make money directly. So people chipping in, even just $1 a month, is very, very much appreciated. So thanks to all the people who've done that. Thanks to Georges, Butterbeans, Niall Donegan, Michael Mullen Jensen, Jonathan M. Hathy, Dave, Steve Hose, Mark Holland, Shelby Kruver, Vlad, Jackie Plage, One Eye 11G, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Kai Sears, IKN, Fadi Mansour, Dirk Didi, Michael Small, Joe Poser, Matt Jellyman, Bennett Piata, David Potter, Mika, Martin, Larry Glock, Dave Umrish, Ricky M, Drive Zero, Mr. Amish, Tobias, Avis, Jonathan Edwards, Barry Williams, Mode 7, Neil, Captain Egghead, Sandman 616, Funky Duck, and D. And also thanks to my Twitch subscribers, because as we've seen in this show amply, I am not only recording this podcast, I am live streaming the recording right from my home studio to Twitch. Sometimes things break, and then you can see how the sausage is. Well, you can always see how the sausage is made. I'm doing this with like a stream of my desktop. You can see all the tools I use, how I use them. But sometimes it breaks, and then you can see how I fix that. So thanks to my Twitch subscribers, because you can also support the show that way. And some of these people are supporting it both ways. Because on Twitch, you can, if you have Amazon Prime, you also have Prime Gaming, I think it's called now. It's basically you can activate that. You can link your Twitch account. I mean, on Twitch you can obviously watch the show for free. When I broadcast it. There's also a video that's there for 14 days. I upload that to YouTube, so you can watch it there for free. But you can also subscribe, and with this, if you have Amazon Prime, you can do that for free. So basically, it doesn't cost you anything, and you kick me some money every month, which is appreciated. The downside is you have to renew that every month, whereas another normal Twitch subscription just auto-renews, I think, generally. Anyway, the people who are doing this are Mike _the Dane, Galteran, Sandman616, Indie Gamiacs, Andy Pants, Redeemer RF, Mode 7 is unavailable, Halifa, who's also streaming right now, I think, and El Terrestrius Jim, a very terrestrial Jim, not on Mars, he's on Earth, he's an Earther. Earth must come first. And then also thanks to ByteMark. I always have to thank ByteMark. They provide the service I use to host the audio files, which would cost me a fortune otherwise in that quality. And they're amazing. They're a UK cloud hosting company. Can wholeheartedly recommend them. These servers haven't been down. They're just working. They've been working for a decade and longer now. It's just amazing. So go to bytemark.co.uk if you need some cloud hosting in the UK. They're amazing. Yeah, and with that, I'm going to sign off. with a song. Of course, the theme song to this show is called Acoustic Roots by Raoul Kabazali. Licensed. Everything on this show is licensed. Well, sometimes I use audio clips that I consider public domain, but generally I license everything. So is the ending song, because we'll have an ending song by Thura, who I've had a song from previously. They're like a modern country band. Thanks for listening. I will be back next week, not this Wednesday, because I'll be streaming video games on Twitch all day, smoking cigars and trying to solve a criminal case in a fictional socialist republic, which is amazing. Until then, aim to misbehave, think for yourself, and always remember, I'm here to fight for your right to have something to hide. See you next week. God, I'm gonna have to redo that. That's like really loud. I don't know why. I don't know why the music's always that loud. Let's redo this.
Soul, hurt, and fire and ice. Raindrops, teardrops, a good old cry. Daytime and nighttime, the light makes me blind. Life leaves scars. You're the only one with access to the backstage of my heart. Will heal the broken parts. You walked this road before, and then I locked door to the backstage of my heart. No time, slow time, truth and denial. Homecoming, home, longing, lost and I'm found. Your hand, my hand, a burning desire. Sad smile, sad eyes, leaving behind. Life leaves scars. You're the only one with access to the backstage of my heart. Will heal the broken parts. You walked this road before, and then I locked door to the backstage of my heart. Turn around and walk away. Let's figure out a way to stay. There's a way for us to rise above. We walked this road before, find that unlocked door to the backstage of my Life leaves scars. You're the only one with access to the backstage of my heart. Will heal the broken parts. You walked this road before, then I locked door to the backstage of my heart.
I have some weird audio artifacts today. And like the stuff I play back, I might have to redo all of this in post. Just the music I can just do. That's relatively easy, but I won't bore you with this. I will now rate you over to Alifa, who is amazing. My favorite streamer. She's just started. She used to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla the whole time, and I watched all that. Now she started playing Surviving Mars, which I burned out on really quickly. But it's very interesting. And it's very expanse. You have to like nice logo on the spaceship there. You have to like get water and air and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Elon Musk simulator. So let's visit her. Say hello from me. I will be back on Wednesday. I'm gonna start at I think 10 Central European summertime in the morning, and I'm gonna play all day. I'm gonna play Disco Elysium, which is an amazing game. It is just lovely. It's amazing. The music's good. I usually can't appreciate it because I listen at 1.6 speed. Oh my god, you're one of those people, Evgeny. Oh no. No, it's all right. I just can't do it. I think my brain would explode. It's amazing to me that people can do that. I think that's like a 50. You're either on one side or the other. You're not indifferent about increasing playing speed of podcasts. It's like Vim or Emacs. It's like one of these things. Anyway, thanks again for chiming in. Thanks again for sending me that feedback. Amazing for all of you to be in chat. This was really cool today. I'm sorry I'm not discussing with people as much as I would do. Okay, I can unmute the alerts now. Why are these actually? Okay, this should be unmuted. Right, okay, here we go. Yeah. I'm sorry I'm not discussing enough with I would love to do more. It's just hard to do on a podcast. But if you come by on Wednesday, it's a very slow and relaxed game. I'll have time. We can discuss all things from vaccination to hacker attacks to my pronunciation of spasiba. Yeah, so many times, so little time, so many great podcasts to listen. They're getting more, right? The podcasting is getting really popular. There's some really, really good ones. And I'm barely listening to podcasts anymore. I don't have a commute anymore. And I can't listen to podcasts while running. I tried. It's not really either they're funny and I laugh and I get out of breath, or they annoy me. That doesn't work with running. That wasn't bad at all, man. I'm trying. See, the downside with me having grown up in the most western part of Germany is that I didn't have Russian in school, and I had French, and I completely didn't learn French. French didn't work for me, even though I went to holiday there a lot. But Russian would have been interesting. Now I'm learning. I'm learning with Tarkov. Actually, Jonathan is. So, by the way, Khalifa's boyfriend who plays Tarkov with me, he's actually doing Russian on Duolingo, trying to understand the scabs or something. I don't know. It's a fascinating language. I'm also currently reading the second part of the Stalin biography I was reading, and it's a fascinating country. I have this map up now that I put on my wall, and I regularly have people that I visit go is Russia really that big? And I'm like, yeah, it's really, really big. That's why Bismarck said, basically Bismarck's first rule when you talk to the Kaiser in foreign policy was, whatever you do, don't piss off Russia. They're really big. And maybe even if they don't have enough rifles, they have a lot of people, and they just send them over the trenches without rifles. The fuckers. Actually, isn't. Well, I know it's projection, but when you in Germany, it is really, really, really big. It is. I mean, okay, a lot of the stuff is empty, but it's big. And Germany is really small. Yeah, Russia is definitely big, but this projection makes it even bigger. Your map's out of proportion. Australia is tiny, so Southern America. Yeah, I know. It's a projection. It's a good-looking map, though, and it has pins in all the places I've been. Hopefully, I can travel again. Anyway, soon. Let's rate Alifa. Say hello to her if you're into games. I'll be hanging out in her chat while I'm finishing this podcast. And see you on Wednesday or next week for the next podcast. Thanks for dropping by. I appreciate it very much. See you soon.